Hello and welcome. This is Jasmine and I'm here with my auntie Shon, and we want to show up for you. To have and to normalize conversations together that you may not have had the opportunity to engage in within your generation, your atmosphere, or even your household. We're so glad that you're here with us today. Welcome to Showing Up For You.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Showing Up For You. I'm Shon and I'm here with Jasmine. Jasmine, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm good. Y'all, today we are talking about mental health awareness. Mental Health Awareness Month was last month. We just got into June. May was Mental Health Awareness Month, and hopeful that we all are educated on that. We know that sometimes we all need more awareness on it. So we wanted to take this opportunity in this episode to share our thoughts and our experiences with mental health awareness. And y'all, welcome into this show.
We're here.
We're here. So Jasmine, how are you feeling about this topic?
I'm really excited for us to talk about this because I'm usually really reflective with this topic. You know, we're now fully into the month of June, and so just reflecting on this last month, and there's been some current events that have been the year anniversary of, and so I've just been very reflective of how I've been taking care of my mental health over the course of last year, and also just asking myself, am I aware of how people are taking care of themselves around me? So I'm excited for us to dive into this topic today.
Yeah. I'm going to piggyback off that. I'm excited for it. And I'll be honest, I'm coming into it with a history of ignorance about it. And then just a point in my life where I had to educate myself and figure out what that means for me and the people around me. And I don't know if that's you all's experience or if you all grew up in a mentally healthy home. A lot of people did, but I know there are a lot of people that struggled with what that looked like. And I'm one of those people. And so we just kind of want to have these conversations to kind of regulate what that looks like in different worlds of how mental health and mental health awareness is approached in the household or in the community, right?
Yeah.
So let's just dive right in. What would you say was your, I was just talking about how I kind of came into it ignorant. Do you feel like you have an experience or a definition of what you thought mental health was growing up?
Yeah, I think my definition growing up, I had thought it was just taking care of yourself. But that was kind of it. It was pretty surface level, right? It was just are you just taking care of yourself? So that could have meant, are you taking care of your homework? Are you taking care of your hygiene? Are you taking care of almost the tasks or lists of things that you needed to get done? Yeah. And so I think that's kind of where what I brought forward into thinking about mental health. And it was definitely till much later that I was oh my gosh, my definition was so off. I had a moment where I was it's so much bigger than what's on my task list.
Yeah.
It was my inner stuff, that I needed to think about and reflect on. And so I would similarly say I did come into it a little bit ignorant, and that's by no means anyone's fault, but I just wasn't in a setting or a surrounding that it was so we talk about what our mental health means.
Right. That's so good, because it's not like everybody had the opportunity of check-ins. You know what I mean? I'm gonna agree with you. I'm also gonna say for me, I totally thought it was mental health awareness or anything mental health meant it was, you had to be crazy to get help. You had to hit a wall, and that meant you needed help mentally. And I also thought it was an adult thing, only adults needed to be aware of their mental health. And so it was up to them to regulate it. And you kind of reach this point of you're in your 30s now, you have now entered the zone of mental health awareness.
Wow.
you know? And that was, like I said, that was my thought of it, that, you know, it wasn't a kid thing. It wasn't a child's place to know or have any business, you know, maturing their mental health, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think that there's for many people, I would, say that there's a stigma that was created around it, as you mentioned, of like, you're crazy, or oftentimes you hear too emotional, or your thinking's illogical. Like, that doesn't make sense. But by your emotions or your logic connected to emotions or whatever, like, that is connected to your mental health, right? And Absolutely. So that's not a negative thing whatsoever. But there was a stigma that for so many, and I think like people are still working out of that, is that it's not craziness, it's not overly emotional, and it's not illogical whatsoever. But just because you're ignorant and you don't know how to handle it, that's your justification for not actually facing what mental health is head on.
Oh, wow. It that's true. It's it kind of makes you think of like, what would be the negative like connotations to that? Because we're talking about what we thought it was, or what, we thought it meant for people older than us, or how we've kind of like given it kind of like this boxed in definition. But then I had to start thinking about like negative things about it. And so for me, a few things came to mind. So like love growing up in a Christian family. But I will say like the atmosphere was more so just pray about it. You know what I mean? And like, I absolutely 150 million% believe prayer changes things. But I also believe that God gave people the gift to help us process things outwardly and help us get through certain things. And if he appointed and anointed those people, why aren't we able to take advantage as Christians? You know what I mean? So there's that. And then there's the idea that it was almost like getting help for mental health was like a sign of weakness. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to go to therapy because that meant something was wrong. Like we talked about, it's like, that means that we're crazy. That means that something's wrong with you. But don't get me wrong. On the other side of that, and I can only speak for what I know about the Black community, we have every right to be cautious about getting help and distrusting medical, officials and therapists and psychologists. Don't read your history books because it's not in there.
True.
School doesn't teach this, but get into Black history. There were so many experiments done on African Americans. We weren't told everything, right? And so there's a history of, she went to the doctor for one thing and then something else happened. After, too many of those instances, no, I don't want to go to the doctor either.
Yeah. Yep.
So generations later, we're like, how come our family never goes to therapy? Or how come our family never gets help? There's a reason. So I understand that. But I want to get back to your thoughts on, like I was saying, about the Christianity approach on getting help when it comes to mental health, therapy, mental fulfillment. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of your thought of weakness, like that was the one word that stood out in my mind. Like there was just bold letters dead in front of my face. Is like, you're weak. You're not. Absolutely because not. Life is hard. And like you had mentioned, like, we were created to have emotions. We were created to express those emotions, to share those emotions. Like, what do we think worship is?
Okay. Oh, sis.
You don't call yourself weak when you you on your knees, you surrender. Right. Like, straight like that. So why is it that when it comes to things outside of that context, why is it in context outside of the church, why is it considered weakness, right? And even to the point, I want to talk a little bit about therapy of seeing a therapist who's not your pastor. Why was that not okay?
Wow.
Right? Because, and like I said, or I want to say, there's no shame to people who seek counsel from pastors. I believe that that is very important. Absolutely, I advocate for that. I think that is huge. But there's sometimes bigger issues that medical trained professionals will know how to handle that pastors cannot. And I want to be very clear about that and stand firm in that, because I think that is really important for people to know that whoever told you, like, just go to your pastor and bring it to them and they'll solve your problem and fix it. No, that's not going to happen.
That's not entirely the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, so I think like there's so many things that we have to break our mindsets to thinking like this is the end all be all for us, because that's not true whatsoever. There all are different alternatives. And it's also just about finding the best alternative for you. And I also think that coming from the Christian context is that I think when you take care of your mental health, there is a level of selfishness that gets put on you. In that context, it's very community based, right? We do this as a community. We share our struggles together. We pick each other up. You're my strength. I'm your strength. All of these things. But people hurt people, right? And so if you have to do what might look selfish to the whole to take care of you, that needs to happen. And so I think there's this negative connotation that taking care of your mental health is selfish. And that is so unfair. And it breaks my heart.
Oh my God, that's so good right there. That's so good. It almost, I'm going to play the devil's advocate right here, because you're making some really great points. But I think like now, meaning like 2021, it's an amazing time to break that, like these traditions that you're talking about, or these thoughts, and also come out of that idea that we're fearful of getting help because of the past. What do you say to that? Like we're fearful, and like we're in a time where like there's so much awareness. Okay, time out. There's also so many Black therapists. I love to see it. Right. We weren't seeing that before. Like there's so much goodness in that, because that's who I want to talk to, because they understand why I'm clammed up and why I don't want to talk to you about my family life. So I'm trying to gather my words, but we're in a time right now where like we can break from these past, expectations or like insecurities about therapy. But then we also like want everybody to open up. How do you expect, or how are you transitioning from this cautious, idea of going into therapy and like, hey, put it all on the table? Like, how are you transitioning?
Oh, that's a hard question.
It is, because it's like I have an amazing, amazing girlfriend. Her name is Jessica Gaddy Brown, right? We went to college together, and she runs Nia Noir, where she is a licensed clinical social worker and a psychotherapist, and she promotes Black therapy for Black women and women of color. I love how specific that is, because not only she was starting this like series, I've watched a few episodes, but there's a series on like mental health awareness, and there's two Black women that are on there, and like I feel like I can relate to this, and seeing things like this makes me say, okay, I'm not crazy. Yeah. And this could be me. And thank you, sis, for speaking out, because now I feel better about going to go get help, or I don't feel as cautious or scared to say, I have that problem too. I struggle from that too. I suffered from that too. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I think that even just based off of that is that we are now where we're at in 2021. There are people who have paved the way for us. There are trailblazers in this so that we could find those niches of therapists. So it's like, there's power in conversation, even just talking to your peer. Like, I grew up grew up. I grew up in a town that I all of a sudden just asked my one of two Black friends who were in the same high school as me, of like, hey, did you experience this? And they were like, yeah, I did. So that opened up a whole extra door for like more things. And so I think my answer to that would be like, we live in an age where we have so much accessible information. Yeah. And let's find that information. Yeah. If we know that we have it accessible to us, what is stopping us? Because we don't have to go through our parents no more. We don't. Yes. So in a way, like, I don't want to be like, there's no excuse, but also there's no excuse. At this point, you're the barrier. Like, if you don't want to get help, the only person that you can point at is you, because all the information is accessible easily.
Right. Like, I've seen people take Zoom calls, especially with the pandemic, right? Zoom calls. I definitely am an advocate of therapy. Absolutely. Counseling, therapy, I am an advocate because I truly believe that there are different stages, in your life, where you might need it relationally, when it comes to like self-healing, spiritually. So no, I think you're absolutely right. The convenience is on our phone. It's even like in a quote that you saw that somebody reposted and you're like, ooh, that hurts. And you're like, I needed that, right? I can't tell you how many times I've screenshot something and like wrote it on my vision board.
Facts. I'm telling you, this whole entire notebook, I got stuff to talk about. I sent Kelsey one about emotional trauma yesterday because I was like, listen, I see it on Instagram, but me and my best friend need to heal from this, so I'm sending it to her.
Let's do it together. Yeah. Together. I absolutely agree. So that's super dope. It's really exciting. When I start to think about what it would look like for me like 10 years ago to have this conversation, it would not have happened like this, Yeah. Did you ever, like, do you feel like you have an experience or maybe a time where you realize like mental health is important? Like for me, like an experience where you were like, I need help.
It was when I got to college. My dependency was gone. Wow. Like, my family was close to me, whatever, but like my emotional dependency had their own lives. Wow. I was moving into a new stage of my life and I could not ignore all of the things anymore. I had no choice because it was going to make or it was going to break me, and I had to make the decision, was it going to break me and let that be it, or are we going to keep pushing forward? So it was when I 18 years old, moved to Ellensburg. That was it.
Wow. That's a huge decision as a young person though, like having to ask yourself that, because that sounds scary. Yeah. Similarly, like mine was in college too. I remember I was stressed out. I was working at a group home, graveyard shift at a group home, going to class in the daytime, and then working, on campus as well. And I was blessed to be a part of and help create a few organizations on campus. So I was like super busy. And I remember I broke down, like I was just crying. And one of my teachers, a Black teacher, which I'm so thankful for, was like, you need to go see somebody. And I was like, no, thank you.
Right. Hard pass.
Right. Like, no, thanks. I'm fine. And so I did. On campus, there was a like center for therapy. And I was like, oh my God, this is a thing, right? This is real. And so I went, and the questions that the therapist was asking me, I feel like she was literally ripping tears out of my face without me knowing. You know what I mean? That was a great experience for me because I didn't know what was pinned up. I didn't know why it was so important for me to finish college when I did, or work all those hours, or like I didn't realize what I was doing to myself. And so that was a big move for me. It made me look at me differently. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I often have to like ask why it's even important, like until then, or even after that, like I wasn't aware of how important mental health was,
Was there a moment that made it important to you? because it's like we can go to therapy, right? And we can heal or like kind of start processing those things. But it's like, what made it a priority, really?
Whoa. I would have to say, like, what made it a priority is realizing that it wasn't just one thing, like realizing that it had many faces.
Ooh,
you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
Because like you like to put it in a box, like we talked about this earlier, you know, it's like we like to say, oh, it's like when you're at your wit's end, or it's like when you're stressed out, you go, like it looks different. And I can personally say, like, mental issues or experiences have attacked my family in different ways. And after a while, you're like, okay, we need to talk about this. Like, we need to address this.
Yes.
And
because silence is loud.
It's loud. And like, you know, after the mourning, after the like, you know, the get-togethers, after the, you know, the I can't think of the word I'm saying, but the word I'm thinking of, but it's after all the like concerning messages or calls or check-ins, there has to be action steps. And I don't remember as a young person knowing what that looked like. And so having these experiences when I was older, I'm like, there has to be a way, like there has to be something like we're missing, you know what I mean? And so realizing different forms, like it's not just, I heard somebody say, it's not just like going to go get a massage. That's not what it always is. It's not just, I just need a break. It's how are you feeding your soul? How are we processing things? You know, I've talked about before, sometimes we internally process and sometimes we need to externally process.
Yep.
Sometimes you just need to listen. Sometimes I don't need advice. Sometimes I just need to hear myself bounce ideas off of you. Yeah. What about you? Man, like this is hitting me.
Hitting different. The moment I realized that mental health was a priority for me was the moment that I took inventory of how it's impacted my life up till a certain point.
Right.
I have a destructive personality if I want to be destructive. Meaning that I can just let myself just go to the deep end. And I had a moment to where I took inventory of that, of like, okay, like what was my trigger to get me to the point to where I felt so low? And it was when I really had the very obvious realization that I was operating at my lowest level.
Wow.
That I then was like, I don't want to be this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to continue to live in a narrative that could easily be put upon me, a label that could be put upon me. I don't want to live in a narrative to be like, oh yeah, well that probably made sense because we've seen it at other points in her life, or you know, this, we've seen how this impacted, you know, her emotionally, and then, you know, I could see how that result could happen. And so it's almost like I took a step back and I looked at, okay, if I let my mental health go down the drain and I saw what the outcome was, did I actually want that outcome? And I did not. Wow.
So it sounds like you had to be intentional. Like you had to you have to be intentional, because it's, you know, you were just talking about, like, it's almost a pattern. Like if you're not intentional, you're creating a pattern, and
Yep.
that's allowing someone else to label you.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that I'm externally processing a little bit right now, but I wish that I would have been aware of how my emotions impacted me at a much younger age. I would say that in my family, and whom I love so much and are so great, but in some contexts, we are very hard on the outside, soft on the inside.
Yeah.
Which can be dangerous, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We share family, you know. And which is like, okay, like that's great and all until your insides are eating away at you.
Yeah. And it's almost like it's a creating an atmosphere. Like you talk about like that external. I heard a saying, and it was like, you could have a brick, and that brick needs to be delivered to somebody. It could be hard news, it could be bad news. It needs to be delivered. You could throw it at them. It'll hurt, but it's a brick. Or you can wrap it up nicely and hand it to them. They're still getting the truth. They're still getting that brick. But at least you didn't throw it at them. And that's how words are sometimes. It's like people feel like they're doing you a favor because they want to tell you what they think of you, because they're being real or they're being honest. And you could have told me that in a better way. You know, I remember hearing growing up like this, it was almost this, paraphrasing, it was like this, I'm going to tell you the truth before you hear it out in the world. Like, I don't mind the truth, but you don't have to tell me that way. This is home. This is my village. Like, I don't want to hear it. It
shouldn't feel like I'm teaching you a lesson. Like, dang.
No, like you can teach me the lesson without like giving me the hardness of it, right? And then what if I decided I'd rather the world be hard and then you on the inside, this atmosphere be soft. That way I have a home, you know, I'm in an atmosphere where I feel safe instead of feeling like once I walk in this door, they're going to give it to me hard because they feel like I need it. You know what I mean? The world is going to do what the world is going to do. We have to do better at creating a safe space at home. You know what I mean? So I get what you're talking about. It's like this hard shell. Like, that's unnecessary. You could tell me the same truth without telling me that way.
Right. And then people end up wondering, it's like, well, why don't they come to me when they go through hard stuff? Because you were the one who shoved it in my face. Why did you think that I would actually end up showing you the soft side of me? Because I never got to see that with you. Right.
And that's even something that like I learned about myself a long time ago. Like, I have to be careful with my words, because not everybody like wants the straight up news. Not everybody wants that. Some people need to hear it differently. And so, you know, you learn that about yourself. You learn that about what you want in other relationships. You know what I mean? So, man, that's a whole nother thing.
It's a lot.
Oh my gosh. But this year has been crazy. So back to like mental health, because we're gonna veer if you let us, guys.
True.
This year, more than a year, this pandemic has been crazy. And Jasmine, as we're talking about mental health awareness, what do you think has been helpful for you this year? Like it's almost like we're forced to know more about ourselves. What do you think are the biggest things that have helped you when it comes to mental awareness?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think mine has come in a couple of different phases within the year, which has kind of been a cool experience for me. At first, I was just like, I want to lay in my bed, I want to watch Netflix, I want to eat junk food, and I want to wallow in self-pity. But I will say, sometimes you need to do that.
And that's okay.
And that is okay, because I didn't stay there forever. Don't stay there forever.
Don't stay there.
But I did that. Like, I lost my job. I had to come home for reasons. I did not know what to do or where I was going to pivot. And I was like, you know what? Life just sucks right now. And I just need my brain to be shut off. So I did.
Wow.
And I was very happy to sit in that for a little while. But as I came out of it, what really helped me was I had the opportunity just to create a lot of beautiful things. I got to be a part of like helping launch a really awesome project with a friend. I had another friend who did like a small girls group, and she would do like, hey, everybody bring magazines and we're just going to do cutouts and we're going to talk about a topic and we're just going to like make collages. And so I just was like creating things. And even like, I mean, you guys are hearing the podcast now, which is awesome. And we finally launched it. But over a year ago and even longer than, like, this was on our hearts. Yeah. And we were creating for this and we were brainstorming and we had so much ideation. Yeah, and like praying for every single one of our listeners of like, give us the words so that we can be of encouragement to others. And so like that was, you know, a creating phase for me. And then it shifted into, you know, I moved into a new place in the city and I live on the beach and it is beautiful. So I go on walks and I go on runs and I just get to observe like life. I put my headphones in and I just get to like, people watching is good for my mental health.
That is a source of mental health.
It really is. Like, I'm telling you, like, think about it. If you go into a space and you see a whole bunch of people smiling, what are you going to do?
You're going to smile. You're like, this is contagious. I like this.
Yeah. So it was like, I think that's what taking care of my mental health, you know, looked like in all throughout each phase of that process. And I mean, it's an ongoing thing, but I was able to have some really like deep internal digging, uprooting, rerouting new things that I wanted to implement. You know, I think so often we talk about like, get this out and deroot and declutter and get everything out. But it's like, what are we, if you're taking something out, what are you putting back in? Are you filling it with something good? What is that, you know, that thing that's going to fulfill you? So I think in that process, it was let's take out, but let's deposit it with something better.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you because even hearing you say all that, like seeing you figure that out about yourself has been such a joy to watch because you do have that space and time to do that. And I think it's almost like I'm thankful for this time. Yeah. You know what I mean? And man, I already favor her, so I'm not even gonna start, guys.
Thank you.
I think so for me, I had to, you know, update, you know, I for those that don't know, I have 2 small roommates that I helped create.
The best.
And an awesome chocolate husband. And so for me, I had to appropriately demand time away and then also help create that time away. Wow. So I didn't have the space to just like walk out of the house. First of all, because we're quarantined, right? Second of all, because I got kids to feed. And so I had to be intentional about what my triggers looked like. If I felt myself need space, or if I say, if I had made a plan in the beginning of quarantine to give myself space once a week, right? Because I had to start working inside the home. So I said, okay, if I demand this, I need to help it come to pass. What does that mean? I would make appointments that I couldn't go back on, right? I would create accountability elsewhere. Because what I'm good for is I'll be like, oh, I'm going to go do this. And then I'll call off, you know, right before, like, you know what? Let me just go do something for the kids. Or like, I don't need this. I'll do, you know, like that's me. So I create these moments of accountability where I have to like hold up my end, whether it was like going to go get a facial, working out with a friend, you know. I have a great accountability partner. She's the bomb and she keeps me on my toes. Or making some kind of like Bible study appointment, something that I have to do. Demanding that of myself, but also making time. So that might have meant my kids are going to go to bed an hour and a half earlier today. Yeah. So bath time is going to get rushed. Dinner is done around 2 or 3 this time. And so that's what my day might have looked like, but I'm working harder to create that space. And that's what it looks like for a stay-at-home mom right now. But it was so important for me to have that I did whatever it took, you know. And thank God I do have a supportive husband who's like, okay, how can I help? You know, and sometimes he wasn't able to because he was at work. So it's like tag team. As soon as you walk in, I'm gone.
Right.
Right. So like I said, demanding that for myself, but then also accommodating the family where I'm helping make that happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I tell you all the time, but I'm in awe of you because I get to firsthand watch how your house operates. And as a single 25-year-old woman who's just trying to take care of herself, I'm like, how did she do it? Because like, it's not always flawless, right?
No,
but
not at all, right?
my head though, when I see it, I'm like, oh, there's nobody else who could have done that. Like, it just makes so much sense. But I say all that to say of like, I respect so much about how you and my uncle create a space of priority for the both of you. He supports you in taking care of your mental health, and vice versa, you do the same for him. But also you guys take care of your two little roommates and you prioritize theirs as well. So it's a whole cohesion. It's not just, I'm gonna go out and do my own thing. Good luck with the kids. Catch you later. Like you said, you have so many things readily prepared for everybody. So like, there's never been a day where I knew somebody was beefing because mom went and got a facial. They were good. They had their snacks. They had their tablets. Right. They got to play outside with mom for 3 hours today. So it's like, we're all happy here. So I'm just, I'm in awe about you.
Thank you. And it also, I want to add this, it helps to have a talk about this with your partner before you like decide this on your own. Marriage is a partnership. And so it took a conversation for me and my husband where I was like, this is what I need. And I feel like you need it too. And so I'm with somebody that doesn't need that preparation. You know, he's very, very capable father, but it's just the idea that we both can readily tag team. And so there was never, because we prepared for that, there was never a time where work was being thrown on them. And so, and like I said, that was because of the communication beforehand. That's important. So yeah, it kind of leads me to like, what would it look like to support habits of mental health? Like we're talking about how we demand it for ourselves and how we like incorporate it in our lives, but like, what are the habits? Like, what are your mental health habits? We talked about how it has many faces. What are your few?
My mental health habits, I mentioned one earlier, walks. Prime time, that's probably my number one. Walks with music. I'm a big music person, so I usually have something plugged into my ears that helps me wind down. So that is one. Two, when I'm feeling low, I resort to isolation. And so if I can feel that trigger, I make sure that I'm surrounded by people who can help me through that. I have this saying called being alone together. I'm in the same room. It sounds so silly, but I'm telling you, once you find your friend or that person that you're alone together with, it will change. And like, you vocalize it to them, be like, or text them, or you have a code word, whatever that may look like. There's nothing better than feeling like you can sit on the couch with somebody. You don't have to talk. You don't have to say a single word or whatever. And you can just like be in a space, because sometimes like we just need to be in a space with someone. Like, I've been in moments where I don't want to talk, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to bawl my eyes out. I don't want to talk about it, but I need to know that like because sometimes we need somebody to feel the emotions with us. And I think that's something that I had to be really honest about with myself. And then the third thing for me, because I am a follower of Jesus, I have to dive deep into just reading my Bible. I'm really bad about it. It's just like my thing, but that's something that I really try to be intentional about, because it's, as people say, it's the book that reads you. It brings out something that you need to hear or you feel to be convicted by even. So those are like my three things that heavily help my mental health. But also I'm going to slide in one other one. Do whatever self-care thing, as in get your nails done, get your hair done, do a facial, whatever. You absolutely, you have to do it. You have to do it. Mine, I don't wear makeup a lot. I don't do a lot of things girly, like I guess some people would say, but once a month I find that thing that I'm like, yes, I deserve this. And I'm going to do it for myself. So I'm a once a month kind of gal.
I love it. I love it. You said so many good things. I really like the idea of alone together. Knowing that you have that person or those people that you can be around, and still be like emotionally fed. You know what I mean? I saw this TikTok tickety talk. I saw a TikTok, and it was supporting mental health, and pretty much one friend said, "Hey, are you okay?" And the other friend said, "No." And the one friend says, "Do you want to talk about it?" And the other friend says, "Not really." And so the first friend says, "Well, can I just sit with you?" And the friend's like, "Sure." And that helps. Like, that's fine. That is a love language. You know what I mean? I think that it's yes, communication is key, but sometimes that's not what's needing to happen. Yeah. So I'm actually really glad you said that. That's huge.
Yeah.
I think for me, I was actually just talking to a girlfriend of mine a few weeks ago about this. I'm not always fed with alone time. I spend a lot of time with tiny roommates. So where I'm fed or where I feel healthy is visiting or talking with a friend. You know what I mean? I went to visit her, and her 2 beautiful twin daughters were asleep. And I remember saying to her, "Do you want me to leave?" And she was like, I was like, "Maybe you can get a nap and I can leave." And she was like, "No, believe it or not, I feel fed having a conversation with you and visiting with you more than I would having alone time or binge watching TV." And so we had this great conversation about like how people are fed differently and what that looks like. And like I said earlier, mental health has so many different faces, and it helps to understand that person. So I realized that about myself. Like, I do feel socially fed when I'm able to be with a loved one. And even if we're not talking about anything, or if we just talk about silly things, I feel rejuvenated, right?
Right.
Exercise is a big deal for me. I love to run. At this point, though, I'm cycling because I had to stop running so far away. My husband's like, you said that you would only do a few miles. And I'm like, I'm only 10 miles down the road. It's fine. And he's like, okay, no, you gotta
wild
back around. Yeah.
Mile 2, turn around.
He's good for like coming to pick me up if I like run too far. He was like, I'll meet you there, but I'm not going with you. So that's those are my things. I think that those are my things. Of course, before the world, closed down, I loved to sit at a coffee shop and read a book. I loved that.
So good.
I did. It was really the simple things for me.
There's something that I wanted to ask you about. We were talking about supporting mental health for ourselves and practical things that we do. But we also talking about being with people together. Yeah. You had shared things about your family. So I'd love to hear, like, how do you support mental health for your kids and your husband?
Oh, that looks really different. So in my house, ever since like my first kid could walk, we have something called a cry chair. And it's not a punishment, and it's not like a corner. What happens is, let's say one of the kids get in trouble or something's wrong. I say, do you want to go sit in the cry chair? And a lot of the times it's yes, because what the cry chair is I want you to have all the space and opportunity you need to sit and process. And it's always some kind of comfortable chair in their room. We've been through about 3 chairs in their lifetime, but it's a chair in their room, and they go sit and they cry, and they might get quiet, be with themselves, and what they'll say is, "I'm done now." And what I want is for them to have that space to themselves and know that there's nothing wrong with you crying it out. I get it. You're upset. Decisions have to be made. B, I don't want you feeling like you have to cry and chase people around, though. Be okay with handling that yourself. I also, in that same, gathering, do you need a hug right now? I'm fine I'd like a hug if you'd like a hug. And while we're hugging, just breathe. Those things make a huge difference. My children are 4 and 6. Those things make a huge difference. It's like that that hug and that breath is like where that last hiccup comes after you cry, right?
Right. When your headache's trying to go in.
So you're like, once that happens, they're open to talk. They've processed what's happened, and I'm able to say, do you know why you're in trouble? Do you understand why I said no? Do you get why that happened? And that to me is a start for like, look at where you are, right? And as they get older, the habits will change. But right now, the cry chair is like it's a known item in my house. And I also am very careful to ask my children, how does this make you feel? Like, I don't want to shut them down. I want them to have space to talk. That means that, yeah, sometimes they might say things and I'm like, typically, I might want to say, okay, you need to calm down.
Right.
But let's address that. Mm-hmm. Right now, you're speaking out of anger. That might result to something else. Is that what you want? Or do you want to rephrase that? And then we go forward. Mm-hmm. For my husband, I learned that he digresses differently than I do. Like, his mental health looks like playing video games for 2 to 4 hours. Like, younger me was like, what a waste of time. Oh my God, he's always on the video game. Like, how dare you? And then I saw like how he would just process things while it was happening. And that's really his thing. It has become a bigger deal because we're home now because of the pandemic, because usually he would be at somebody's open gym or he, you know what I mean, playing volleyball or basketball. So for me, it's okay. The kids are in bed. If the living room is yours. He usually likes the biggest TV in the house. That's yours. Mm-hmm. Do what you got to do. I'll be over here. Or, now that the world is opening back up, open gyms are like able to be, you can reserve it. So, all right, that looks like I'm on kid duty all day. Cool, do that, because his open gym is my facial. You know what I mean? Yeah, his open gym is my 10-mile run. Mm-hmm. And I have to understand it doesn't look the same, but it gets the same results. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something that I want to share that I've experienced with your family. You have your tiny roommates are hilarious. I love them. Anybody who knows me knows how obsessed I am with them. But there's one day we went to breakfast and your daughter was sitting right next to me and she was coloring and doing her own thing and minding her business, and we were all just hanging out. And she looks me dead in my face and she goes, Jasmine, how are you feeling right now? And I was like, excuse me? You're 5. She was 5 at the time. But I really looked at her and I was like, she really wants to know. Like, absolutely. I couldn't just be like, yeah, I'm fine. But that's because you have cultivated something in your house that I was like, this 5-year-old wants to know about my soul right now. And I was like, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I told her and I was like, we could talk about the rest later because we're at breakfast and I'm not trying to sit here and cry in front of nobody. But it was just one of those things that was so cool because it just goes to show, if you invest in your children at such a young age, mm-hmm. That in a way, that return of investment comes back much sooner than you think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's and I'm going to speak to that on a parent point of view because I feel like my mom tried that with us. And I say tried because I feel like her generation didn't offer what our generation is offering, mm-hmm. right? My mom would do things like she had all daughters. So she would take us on dates or she would let us drink out of wine glasses at home. Right. And that was her way of treating us, showing us that we deserve to be treated a certain way, right? Mm-hmm. And what's sad about what I feel she deserved brunch. She deserved to have said every Sunday, I'm walking out of here and I'm going to brunch without you guys. Yeah. But that just wasn't happening. That wasn't mm-hmm. her atmosphere. That wasn't the opportunity she got. She was a single mom and she was working her behind off. So she wasn't able to take that time away. Mm-hmm. And so here I am and I'm like, she did all that and she didn't even get the self-care Sundays. She didn't.
Right.
And so how can I do how can I take advantage of that time, you know, and still be a great mom like she was?
Yeah.
You know, or she is, you know what I mean? And so it's awesome. And it also, like, I'll just add one more thing. It helps to not be guilted when you want to, you know, advocate for self-care when it comes to you. It helps to not feel small because you want to have alone time. And I don't know that my mom had that opportunity. You know what I mean? There are times we guilt people, and because we make them feel guilty for wanting to be alone. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Why are we doing that? You know what I mean? And I feel like my mom deserved that. My mom deserved, you know, to have that, and she didn't.
Yeah.
You know, this Mother's Day, my husband's present to me, he planned for and reserved a weekend for me to be away without the kids and without him. First of all, I never packed a bag so quick.
She was out of there.
And I didn't even go do anything special, y'all. I had coffee, I read a book, and I watched Law and Order, I think, and I took a bubble bath. Like, it was great. But I remember someone saying, like, you're spending Mother's Day without your kids? And I was like, absolutely I am.
I brought them into this world.
I brought them into there. They know I exist. It's wrong. But it's that's what I feel like our last generation got. They didn't get these opportunities, you know? And so I have to advocate and make it known for my children, so nobody can make them feel small for having emotions or for needing time away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so good. Ooh, that's so good. So how do we show up for others?
Wow. When it comes to mental health, I think we show up for them by being present in their happiest self, and their want, as much as they do, want their healthiest selves. But that takes communication, right?
Yeah.
It takes communication and asking, okay, how can I be present for you? That's I think that's my huge thing, is you never know how somebody needs you. You never know if they just want to talk or if they just want to sit there. But ask that question.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that, you know, the older that I get, the more complex this comes for me personally. And I more take the approach of, like, I'm coming at it from an encouragement standpoint rather than like, you should do this, because the standard that I hold for myself and my mental health, it might not be the same as somebody else. So it's like, one, it first is recognizing that, but then the second part is a question that I often ask myself is, how can I better be here for you in this situation?
Yeah.
And give that person, I feel like it's a broad enough question to, you know, somebody can say, I physically need you to be here. I just really love if you could text me in a week and check up on me. You know, I'm actually okay right now. I don't feel like talking about it, but thanks for checking up on me. Like, it just gives people the opportunity to accept that help and that encouragement, or also not, you know, take it as well and let that be okay. I know for myself, I was sharing this with a friend recently, is that there are times where, because I'm such a deep investment kind of person, that I've been much deeper and invested in someone than they are in themselves. And that stirred like this bitterness in me. And so I had to really take myself out of that, of like, if they don't care, why do I care so much?
Wow. That happens. And adding to that, like, you know, caring too much, it helps if you're not placing your opinions on that person, right? It doesn't help if you're trying to tell that person how to handle their own mental health. Yes. That's huge. I remember I'm sharing all the stories today, I guess. I remember I got an opportunity to go into a career that I had been dreaming to go into. And some would say that men usually take on this career. But I had the opportunity to do it, and I was so excited. This was not too long ago. I was very, very excited. And for me, I am a stay-at-home mom, and I don't have any ill feelings towards staying home. I will do anything for my family at any point in my life. But I don't think that this is my permanent situation. I love where my career has been, and I would love to continue it when life gets normal again, right? Mm-hmm. And so having said that, I remember I had this opportunity, and my husband and I talked about it, and he was so supportive of it, and he was actually willing to change his career to support my career. Wow. So we had this big talk about it, and nobody knew, and one person in my family knew, and someone else ended up finding out, obviously. And so it was an older woman, and when she found out that I was willing to take this career that take on this career that would essentially take time away from my family, she almost gave me a scolding.
Wow.
Right? She said things like, it was like, why are you doing this and leaving your family? Your kids and your husband need you at home. And it was that type of speaking where I was like, first of all, it's 2020.
Right. 2021.
Right. So second of all, like, my husband is very fine. And the fact that you think that I can't, that I didn't think about my family in this, and that I can't feed my soul in where I feel God has me, because now you're guilting me into staying in a place you feel I should be. And sometimes we do that to people. We belittle them, or we make them feel guilty because of our opinion on how they should have self-help, or how they should have fulfill themselves mentally. Yeah. We do that, and we have to be very careful. You don't know what you're minimizing in that person. It hurts because mm-hmm. you're showing them that you don't support them, and you're showing them that your view and your opinion on how they express or fulfill their mental health or their goals is less important than what you think about it. And that is hurtful and very toxic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's what I mean by like how we like to judge or respond negatively to how people have their own ways of dealing with mental health. Like I said, mm-hmm. it looks different, and don't let this podcast fool you. Yes, we're having this conversation, and we've mentioned a few things. We know how serious mental illness is. We mm-hmm. both have seen it firsthand and have dealt with it with deep emotion and regret and issues. So we know the many faces of it. Being someone that, like I said, has seen it happen, my knowledge of it now is to check in, be available. Not about me.
Right.
It's about you. Like, I found myself running to someone's aid more than enough times, just to show I support you. Even if it was what's the word I'm looking for? Even if it was a false call. Like, even if it was like, okay, it wasn't that serious. Yeah. I need you to know I'm here for you.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's more important than ever. If this last year has taught us a lot of things, it's if there's somebody important in your life, or somebody's on your heart, or you're thinking about something or somebody, just like vocalize it and say it. Open up that means of communication, because mm-hmm. it can save somebody's life. It really can. And we live in a society, that later rewards, things that people have overcome. But it's like, why can't we be a people who just reward those who just express what they're feeling about something?
Wow.
I think that we could create a better world if we text somebody and say, I'm just really proud that you called me, when you were bawling your eyes out, because I know how much strength that took for you to do that. I know how much strength or courage it took for you to face that thing that has been tearing you down for 10 plus years. Like, that's something that's been really heavy on my heart of like, I think that we're rewarding the wrong things when it comes to mental health. Wow.
That's a bold statement.
Showing up for you or making bold statements, y'all. Like, we're going to shoot it straight.
That's crazy though. Like, you're right. Wow. Yeah. So do you, like, where have you seen that happen? Like, has it happened to you? Do you feel like you've experienced that personally?
I have. Those people who are close to me know how closed off I can be with some heavy things in my life. This last year, I've had to have some hard conversations. We had a family thing that happened, and I made the decision. I was like, I don't think that I can sit in this any longer. Didn't turn out the way that we, and I'll say me, had necessarily hoped, but a good friend of mine who knew about it and who knew the anxiety and the fear that I was bringing into it of like, I might be reprimanded about this for the rest of my life. And that friend said to me, I'm just really proud that you made a step that you never thought that you would make, regardless of the outcome. And that was such a humbling moment for me of like, what if I reciprocated that back to her? Like, she didn't know how much that impacted me. And later we had a conversation about it, because I also think that we should really thank people, for helping us, get through hard moments. But I just thought that was so cool, because I was like, I didn't see my strength in that, and she saw that in me. Wow. And she pulled that out of me.
Wow. Oh, that's so good. That is so good. You guys, as we close this off, first of all, we want to say thank you for listening. We definitely went all over the place with this episode, because this is huge. It's very important to us. I want to add a last thought, and I absolutely want to hear you on this. You all, what are your thoughts on therapy? I love it. I call them maintenance checkups. My husband and I, we see someone periodically. If your car breaks down, you go get it fixed. But if you get maintenance, on it, you are less likely to have a bigger bill, right? And so that's the way we see it when it comes to our marriage. And then also, in that, not everybody can go see a therapist or have that space and time. We want your feedback. How are you creating those opportunities? Or do you have those villages where you're able to talk it out and outwardly process to somebody, even if it's a group chat, it's a group of friends? Who is your accountability partner? You don't have to tell us the name, but do you have accountability partners where you're able to say, I've just had a bad day and this is why, right? Or how are you handling that? How are you advocating for yourself when it comes to the health of your mentality? Any last comments on that, Jasmine?
Yeah, no, I just echo everything of what you said. That was so good. I hope that this episode has helped open your mind. Yeah. And also if there's anything that you disagree or like, I think about this differently, please let us know as well, because mental health is an ongoing journey. So how we process it as we navigate it. It is also, thankfully, and I'm grateful for this, it's also ever evolving. There's more studies that come out. There's more resources. There's more things. And so we want to be people who advocate for that. So we're super grateful that you made it this far with us.
Thank you, everybody. And we look forward to hearing your feedback. Alrighty.
See you soon.
Bye.